Welcome, everybody. When Max and I started the company 7 years ago, there was probably a handful of us in the community. Today, we're seeing the community double roughly every 6 months. So if we go by just our registrations for this event, we have about 3,000 tuning in today live, in person and online. If we extrapolate that over the next couple of years, we'll need a football stadium to host the next Causal AI community event. So this is really exciting development. And let's see, that's me. Fantastic, and we'll go through that in a minute. But it's fantastic to see not only the community growing at such a rate, but having some of the most influential voices in our community in this very room. And we couldn't be happier to host both a Nobel Prize winner and a Turing Award winner and some of the most iconic practitioners from some of the most iconic companies on the planet. And I think together as a community, we can take this science forward and embed it in all parts of society. There was one thing that Elon Musk said at the last conference I saw him, and it really stuck with me, and that was that we are really at the beginning of this. The future, the end state is 99% of all intelligence is going to be artificial, and the 1%, the humans, we're just going to act like a backstop, making sure the AI doesn't, create an Atlas movie-like scenario. And so I think we're really at the very beginning of this journey, and I think our community has a special part to play into making this a reality. So when we look back, I think, and we tell our grandchildren stories about AI, we can be, we can hopefully sit there and be like, yeah, we are the people that empowered AI with causal reasoning, and therefore we had this major contribution towards creating AI we can trust. So that's just high level around the now. I want to cover two themes that we're seeing that I think are important to share. So last conference was 6 months ago in New York, and over the last 6 months, two major things have happened. One, people have realized that generative AI and LLMs are not AGI, and they cannot solve all of the problems in the world, and especially when it comes to enterprise decision making, where we have to have very trusted insights that are repeatable and verifiable, right? So we realize that LLMs are not very good at sophisticated quantitative problems. And so that realization means that, and it's great for our community, we can come and fill that gap. So one of the big themes that we'll talk about today, and Max later will have a deep dive of how we are tackling this, is around, can we ground LLMs with causal reasoning? Can we make them more trusted? And can we enhance them in a way that they can do they can solve things like sophisticated, complex mathematical problems. So that's theme number one. Can we ground LLMs with causal reasoning? Theme number two is, how can we, given that we are really at the beginning of AI adoption, how can our community, build causal models faster, right? Like if we need 3 to 6 to 9 months just for one model, we're never going to get to a state where AI is everywhere, right? And so one of the big themes, and where we see generative AI and LLMs extremely helpful, is to enable us to build causal models much faster. So how can we use LLMs to write causal models for us? How can we achieve that? And that's a big theme of today as well. And again, Max will show you how we've approached this and how we can empower you now to move 10x faster than using conventional tools. So thank you so much for being here. I will welcome now Tom on the stage with me, and we will cover a little bit about the future of enterprise decision making. So this is the causaLens view of the end state in the enterprise. Thanks, Tom, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And so Tom is our director of product and is involved with working with our customers, working on strategy, all sorts of cool things. So you definitely should find some time to talk to Tom. And so our community, we mentioned that our community has a critical part to play in creating the future of AI. But Causal AI itself has a critical role to play into shaping business outcomes. And so Abraham Lincoln said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think if you're going to take one takeaway from today is that Causal AI can help you shape your business KPIs. We don't want to predict them, right? We have agency. We want to shape them. That's what we are all here today. And this is just a little evolution of AI in the enterprise. We had awesome tools like Tableau, Power BI, Looker, and so on that helped us answer a backward-looking question. They helped us answer the question of what happened in the past. And that's useful, right? And we create a lot of value, but it's limiting, right? It's just a rear view mirror. The next wave of change that happened in the enterprise was around predictive AI. So how can we predict something? And again, that's very useful, but as you will see in a minute, most questions that you're asking in the enterprise are not what will happen, but what action should I take today to shape what will happen? How can I create a better future for my business? How can I improve this KPI? And that's where Causal AI comes in. Causal AI is all about shaping outcomes. And so this is just to illustrate the point. What you see here are a bunch of predictive questions. Let's take one of them. What can I do? What is the probability of a customer churning, right? That's a predictive question. It's interesting. You get a number. It's a 67% probability of churn. But what do you do about it? What you want to know really is the causal question. What should I do today to change that probability? And that's just one example of how we can reframe, how we can answer business questions directly. We no longer need to reframe them into predictive questions. And that's really what causality unlocks for us. So, in other words, what causal models do, what structural causal models do, is they allow you to play countless futures of your business and then allow you to pick the future that you want. And that's really what causal AI is all about. If you can learn how the real world works, you effectively have the power to run all potential counterfactuals, and you can pick the future you want. You can't do this with traditional predictive models. And so, talking about the enterprise end state, this is a model enterprise. Most businesses look like this. They make stuff, they produce stuff, they have customers, they have marketing strategies, they need to think about pricing, and it's all connected actually. Most practitioners end up just being in one piece of this, right? But the reality is that the enterprise is just a giant causal diagram. It's all connected. And so, if you are able to answer one of these questions, that we start with customer attention, you can ask a causal question of how can I retain customer X? And so, what action should I take in order to retain customer X? And that's a cool question, and it's a causal question, and you can answer it. And ideally, you would want it in a magical way. You want to just type this into a AI, and you want the AI just to tell you, right? You don't want to spend 9 months building models and figuring it out. You just want the answer, right? So then you may ask a bigger question. Okay, how about a cohort of customers? Similar thing. You want to go around and ask all these causal questions about how do you improve your business, your marketing strategy, what is the optimal price I should charge? What are the optimal promotions I should charge? Know that all of these business questions are causal. They're not predictive, right? And probably, you guys would know that an LLM won't be able to answer these things because we need to actually quantify things, right? And so we can keep going around and build causal models for each part of the enterprise. And then we can have people higher up, the senior management, the C-suite, can start asking causal questions too. Today, this almost never happens. But with this vision of the future, where we have a huge causal model for the entire enterprise, we can start asking questions like, why are revenues down? And we can get a causal answer to that question. We can say, well, we can look at all of these different aspects of our business and we can optimize across all of them. We can optimize across price, promotions, customer retention strategies, and we can understand why are the revenues down and what we can do about it. So we are unlocking now some new opportunities that were previously not possible. And the only reason we can do this is because we have this giant causal model of the enterprise. Now, how do we make this a reality? So this is pretty cool. You ask any question about your business and you get an answer how to improve it. Sounds magical, but how do we actually do it? Well, we will cover just high level. Max, actually, you should definitely come to Max's session later in the afternoon. Max will double click on the how, which is going to cover it from kind of a strategic perspective. So you may think your first answer may be like, hey, yeah, let's just have an LLM do that. But in our community, we know that LLMs have limitations and they can't quite do this thing. So we know that LLMs are good at basic maths, but they struggle with sophisticated quantitative methods, time series, and so on, where we want a verifiable answer that is the same every time we ask the question. And so we need something more than an LLM. There's a really cool paper here from a bunch of great scientists that asked the question of, can large language model infer causation from correlation? And the TLDR was no. And this is what happens if you have a little prompt on a generative AI system that says, yeah, show me a salmon swimming upriver. You're going to get that, right? So that's just a funny example to illustrate that we can't quite trust generative AI with answering these questions. And so I just want to conclude with a little analogy or a little metaphor of how to think about generative AI and causal AI. And both technologies have a room for the end state, right? We need both of these technologies to answer this causal question. So when the CEO comes and says, why are revenues down and what can I do about it? We need both technologies to answer this question. We need the generative AI, which is kind of like system one of the human brain. It's kind of, if you guys have read the book by Daniel Cunningham, Thinking Fast and Slow, that's really what generative AI and LLMs are very good at. They're very intuitive. The first word that comes to mind, awesome stuff. Causal AI is amazing, though, at the system two thinking. It's very good at taking a step back, evaluating all potential outcomes, and then deciding which one we should take. And so really, the only way we can answer these really cool questions is by combining both technologies. And actually, this is happening right now. There is an explosion of research of how we can combine these two technologies together. And so I couldn't list all these papers, but if you guys want, we can share them with you. There's a nice survey paper here that you can take a picture of. And it's an explosion of science in this field. And we at causaLens, we like to think that we are at the forefront of this. Not only we're at the forefront, we actually make this a reality today. And if you guys want to see how we make that, we have some demos there in the back room. Cool. And at that point, I will hand it over to Tom, who will take us through some more grounded things of how we make this a reality. Thanks, Tom.
Perfect. Thank you, Darko. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you for tuning in if you're on the live stream. So what I wanted to focus on today is how we're actually realizing this within the product. I think Darko's given us a great example of the vision and the context and how we're considering and thinking about these challenges. But I wanted to give you a short 15-minute product update so that you can see how we're making this reality. So in terms of how we think about bringing causal AI and generative AI together, it starts in the middle with the causal artifacts. So your causal graphs, your structural causal models. And there are then two complementary pillars that sit around this. The first one that I want to focus on is consumption. So how do we actually use causal AI to enhance the outputs of generative AI? And Darko's mentioned grounding, and this is one of the key pieces that we see as using causal artifacts to ground trustworthy answers from generative AI models. This is something that we've already got working demonstrations and working examples of within our product. And so in this case, we can see a customer retention example. You can ask in natural language, okay, how can I actually, what would the impact of investing in better product quality be if we managed to reduce our bug rate? We can see that the Gen AI model actually responds in quantitative terms, so indicating that it would be approximately 2-3% lift in our retention. And we can cite why it's done that. We can go back to and refer to the structural causal model that is powering this response and say, this is the code that was actually invoked to call this. We can see that it's performed a simple intervention to actually get there. So this enables you greater transparency, greater trustworthiness for the enterprise decision-making applications that you are focused on today. So conceptually, we see this as an extension of the existing grounding tooling that is popularized in the Gen AI world today. So knowledge graphs, RAG, we're very familiar with these terms. We see causal artifacts as being another string to the bow in your grounding. And this means that you can ask these types of natural language questions, but have responses that aren't just based on documentation, aren't just based on links and entities within your knowledge graph, but are truly within the the cause and effect relationships that power your business. So that's one side. That's the consumption side of the strategy. The second piece then is creation. So how can we actually enable you to accelerate your time to value using generative AI in creating causal AI? And we're working actively today to create agentic workflows that enable you to do this. But broadly and simply, it's effectively enabling the acceleration through the canonical causal workflow. So there are 5 stages, and we are looking at agents at each and every stage with the goal of eventually building and implementing a co-pilots at each of these stages to enable you to push this forward. So the goal would be over time, their capabilities increase, and eventually we get to the point where we can have a totally assisted and augmented workflow to enable you to get to outcomes far more quickly. We've already seen sparks of this, whereby we have domain knowledge co-pilots in existence in the product already. So the ability to refer to a generative AI LLM that is trained or fine-tuned on your knowledge base and actually use that to embed domain expertise into the algorithms that you're working on. So the next piece then is how are we making this a reality elsewhere in the product? What else are we working on and focused on? Generative AI isn't everything that we do today, and we've made some amazing strides. Last time that we were in the States for the Causal AI Conference, Ronald, our VP Engineering, and I were tucked in a corner showing a prototype of what is now known as Decision Studio. So this is a purpose-built development environment that we believe accelerates data science productivity by 10x in moving through the causal workflow. So it is available to test today, as with all of the different product capabilities you've seen, and something that we believe has a number of superpowers above and beyond what you can get in the market already. One of those being meta cells. So meta cells allow you to have flexible UI inputs with the ease of use of UI inputs with the flexibility of code underneath it. So we can see here that a causal graph has been rendered, but ultimately I can go in and open up that meta cell, change the layout, because I can tweak any of the code that underpins it, and then re-roll it and run it again. What we've seen this in our customers really to enable is effectively collaboration. As a technical data scientist, I can go in and generate a component that does a very powerful or very custom complex piece of logic, and I can wrap that into a very, very easy to use, straightforward interface that I can then publish to my domain expert, my business stakeholder, and actually accelerate through these workflows. We think this is crucial and critical for causal AI specifically because domain expertise and actually enhancing AI algorithms with the insights of the business is such a core workflow, particularly when you're doing things like causal discovery and uncovering those cause and effect relationships from the data. The next piece, and within that MetaCell world, we have a whole range of different capabilities. So this is just a snapshot of the MetaCells that we provide out of the box. We believe that they help you to work through that causal workflow far more quickly and actually drive your time to value down. You can also define and customize your own, and it makes it very, very straightforward to do that. On that theme, we're very committed to enabling customers to actually execute remotely and make use of the existing technology that they have. We know that you have petabytes, hundreds of millions of rows of data, that you want to make use of for AI, and we actually have the ability to push down causal discovery, causal modeling into existing enterprise data warehouses. This is key in accelerating the time to value, but also unlocking the true scale of the data that you have available. So we've got a number of supported partners in this space, and we're also available on all of the major public clouds such that you can activate and install in the environment that you're most comfortable with. On the theme of pushing down and accessing all of the enterprise data, obviously causaLens is deeply focused on enhancing the science of causality as well. And with that, we have some key advances in causal AI. I want to share a few of those highlights today. The first one being related to accessing and working with massive scale enterprise data. Scaling causal discovery is one of the key challenges that a lot of our customers face. And so we've got a number of tools, and I just want to highlight one here today, which is the implementation of a cut and merge algorithm. Today, you can work with partitions of your data. So you can take your hundreds of millions of rows, partition it up, and then take a divide and conquer approach to define and discover subgraphs within that data. And then you can actually, and these subgraphs can be discovered using any of the available causal discovery algorithms that we have, so A star, FCI, PC, allowing you to customize and choose which one fits the requirements you have, the partition of data that you're working with. And then you can actually roll that back up. And cut and merge in this divide and conquer approach then allows you to take those partition subgraphs and actually identify the cause and effect relationships between them. This means you can parallelize causal discovery across massive data sets and get to results that are more accurate and more understandable. Another area which we're huge fans of is structural causal models, and these form a key part of the causaLens platform. Historically, we've focused on CausalNet, which allows you to fit smooth, continuous functions to a structural causal model. But what we found is that customers ultimately have mixed data, they have highly categorical examples, and so they need to go beyond just parametric, simple, smooth functions. And that's why we've introduced new structural causal modeling frontiers that allow you to not only choose arbitrary node models, so you can use a scikit-learn, a traditional machine learning model in your structural causal model, allowing you to express multiple different ways of modeling. But we've made it far more easy to ingest and add very, very complex and custom domain expertise-driven rules. So this means that you can have a hybrid solution whereby you have certain areas of your graph learned by purely data-driven techniques, but others, such as in the marketing mix world, identified using ad stock or hill functions to simulate the saturation effects you might see with spend. Or in the manufacturing root cause analysis world, using physical laws and fluid mechanics to actually describe the known areas of the systems, meaning that you can now model things like multi-scale physics and different types of phenomena in a single graph. So that's a very whirlwind tour of what we've been looking at and working on in the product from a holistic point of view and crucially from a generative AI, causal AI, better together story. Hopefully what we've helped you to understand is there are causal questions everywhere in your organization, and we want to give you the power and the tooling to answer those. As we'll hear from over the course of the day, there are already pioneers and luminaries in this field using these very tools to answer complex, critical business questions. And so we want you to, over the course of today, always have in the back of your mind, how will you answer your causal questions? And hopefully take something away today on how you can actually take a step in that direction. So thank you very much.
I'm going to ask you to stay up there. There's a couple of questions.
Uh-oh.
Good stuff. How would you compare causaLens model with the do-I package in discovering causal graphs and their relationships?
So in terms of kind of comparison to do-I, our colleagues at Microsoft and Amazon are doing some fantastic work in the space and helping to push the whole field forward. The do-I package is focused in a number of areas. We've spoken about causal discovery today. That isn't necessarily a capability that's within that area as well. And then there are some other nuances around structural causal modeling. So some of the areas that I highlighted around the ability to use custom node models, ingest and set kind of edge functions more explicitly. That's something that we're pushing the frontier of. But I'm happy to take that question offline and dive into the details around that.
Maybe just to highlight that at causaLens we take an all-encompassing approach. So we do not want our partners to choose between open source and our methods. We care about putting it all under a unified roof so that when you have a causal question, you can have an agent that can help you guide you to what is the best method. And if that matters and turns out to be do-I, that's great. But there's many limitations to that particular method in certain settings. So you may actually require different methods. So with our approach is we want to bring everything under the unified roof and help you guide, accelerate your workflow to solutions.
Thank you. There's one more question here. It might be best to flick to Max, but later this afternoon, but I'll ask it. You ground your answers in causal facts. Is this done by sandboxing an off-the-shelf LLM or some sort of RAG as a service?
We're flexible in what sort of generative AI model you want to use. Really what we're providing are those artifacts within which it's grounded. So we use the typical kind of open source stack around LangChain that allows you to integrate with any LLM that you would need. So there's no lock-in, there's no sandboxing of the generative AI model in that sense. But yeah, as you said, Max will get into the details of that.
Perfect. There was another question about are the slides available later? Yes, we'll make sure they're distributed. I'll answer that one. Okay.